Hmm. So without further ado, let us jump right into our explanation and presentation. And as I have told you already, Badiüzzaman Said Nursi has been my role model ever since I was a teen. I remember I was 12 years old when I first read his autobiography. It was this thick, this long, in Kurdish, and it really left a huge impact on the structure of my thinking, on the paradigm through which I was looking at the world growing up, right? I remember I was 12 and I had one of his quotes written on a piece of paper and I put it in my pocket that he said, the problems, that the forces that are working against religion are a lot, and the forces that work for religion in this modern age, they're short and periphery. So, in order to maintain the balance, we have to work night, day in and day out. So that was really striking to me. Something touched in me that I put it in my pocket when I was 12. I'm playing on the streets, playing football. And obviously, then I went to the Hizmet-based schools. There, I received and I got nurtured by those ideas that I assume were inspired by Badiüzzaman Said Nursi, right? And I am forever grateful for the existence of this man as a religious thinker as well as a Kurd. They both make up and constitute my sense of pride in him. And basically, much of my paradigm that I look at science, that I look at Islamic sciences and how to strike a healthy balance without going too far is this guy. Is not only him, but him working as a mirror to reflect many of God's names. That is what is so interesting about him. He does not take ownership of his writings and unveilings. We say spiritual unveilings. Does anybody have an idea what does that mean, spiritual unveiling? Spiritual discoveries. Okay. Are you all following, right? Because I have
Yeah, we
removed
hear.
the bar. Okay. So he does not take ownership. He does not say that I thought about the epistles of light. It was rather a coming as a result of divine impulse of inspiration. As Ibn Arabi famously said that his writings were unveilings, right? He did not also take ownership. He said they came under the impulse of divine inspiration. I mean, that sets the bar so high that very few other authors are capable of actually uttering such a statement with felicity, with veracity and truthfulness. Okay, so the format of our presentation is going to be lecturing and didactic. So I'm going to go through the slides and give a background on his works, on his outlook, and the context that he wrote, the times and conditions that he went through that influenced from the divine web of destiny his overall magnum opus, his epistles of light. Okay, let us now dive right into it. So as you can see, these are the pictures of his village that he came from. Okay. Pardon for this first session is not going to be that interactive, but in the other sessions, everybody is going to have almost the same time limit. So I'm going to be the moderator, but you're going to have a lot of time to discuss your ideas because we read 50 pages weekly, and I'm expecting that everybody is, comfortably sharing their ideas so that we're going to have an enriched understanding of that man's ideas that was reflected from God's mercy and other names. Okay, birth. So born in 1877 in the village of Norse, Hizan district, Bitlis province. So he's coming from a Kurdish family, and the family was really pious. His father and mother Their names are Nuria, the mother, and Mirza, the father. He was known for their piety and God consciousness. And I'm going to share two interesting examples that sort of prepared and paved the way for all the breakthroughs that on a scientific, spiritual level, Badiüzzaman Said Nursi went through. Okay, the first spiritual example was from his mother, Nuria. So you can say that we see a lot of instances of Nur, a lot of instances of light. His mother, his works. So it's basically this guy is interacting and encountering divine light even before birth. Now, Nuria was supposedly so pious of a woman that every time when he sort of breastfed Badiüzzaman Said Nursi as a kid, he had ablution. And that spiritually protects the child, as there is a famous narration from Prophet Muhammad that once a person came and asked him, how do I raise my child? Or in a sense, when do I start raising my child? And the Prophet said, it starts from the womb, right? It starts from the womb. And the guy asked, how does that work? And the Prophet sort of answered in the following, that they have to be fed with halal and lawful means. And that takes me to the other story from his father now. His father was known also for his piety. That he was I guess a shepherd, that whenever he took the cows out in the fields, he would sort of put a rope on their mouth so that they wouldn't transgress and eat from the fields that they weren't supposed to be eating, right? Because he said, I do not want any haram, unlawful food and income to come to my family. So these spiritual preparations, as I said, paved the way for Badiüzzaman's spiritual discoveries. As a child, exhibited extraordinary intelligence and curiosity and spiritual inclination. Okay, then we go to early schooling and family influence. Memorized parts of the Quran and learned religious discipline at home. Influenced heavily by his mother's spiritual teachings on honesty, received early instruction from his elder brother, Mullah Abdullah. So by the age of 14, he got the ijaza, the license to teach as a formal mullah, Islamic scholar, by the age of 14. There are many extraordinary stories about the magnanimous and the magnificence of his mind. Okay, we're going to go through them just to get a bit of taste of his early childhood. Now, so he journeys through different madrasas. There are traditional Islamic learning centers. He left home around age of 12, and until 12, he studied within the parameters of his family and his small province. Then he leaves home at the age of 12. Now, nowadays, people, they don't want to leave their home, even by the age of 15 or 20, right? Look at that scholar. That is true of many of the scholars in the Islamic history. I know you know many names that sort of left their houses and their homes and the comforts and the boxes they were living in order to broaden their perspective. I think they obviously didn't leave. God pushed them to leave. And that's one way to look at destiny playing it all out. Imam Shafi'i is another famous scholar that at the age of 10, his mother specifically um, took him with herself and sent him to Medina to be studying under Imam Malik. Okay, so he studied in madrasas of Tag, Badlis, Sirt, and Mardin, attended 15 and plus different madrasas, often staying only days in each due to rapid mastery. So instead of, the traditional madrasa curriculum back in the day took a student 15 years to finish. And Badiüzzaman Said Nursi, they supposedly say he finished and completed all the different branches of Islamic sciences within 3 months, right? There's this famous recollection of him that there's a famous book called the Jam' al-Jawama. You might have heard of it. It was written during the 14th century. And that book takes a solid 1 to 3 years to finish. That is a very complex book. It is no joke. I mean, you have to be a native speaker in Arabic, first of all, in order to understand what it is saying. Do you know how long did it take him? Supposedly, from different sources that I made sure, it took him only a week. Okay? That is no joke. If any of you is familiar with Islamic sciences and that book in particular, that is an extraordinary feat of intellectual achievement. Okay. Now, intellectual brilliance and memory. Memorize multiple major texts in days, including Jam al-Jawama, the one that I told you, Mutawal, and Sharh al-Mawaqif. Could explain complex philosophical and theological arguments from memory. Debated senior scholars while still a teenager, often surprising them with deep insights. One of the things about his personality that we can look up to, I mean, he represents eternal values. When we say we can look up to, it doesn't mean we're not going to look up to anybody else, right? Because anyone that should be looked up to, they represent eternal values and principles and archetypes that these people represent from God's own wisdom, that God chooses certain people and tests them, right? So basically, yeah, he debated many scholars and he was always fearless. He always stood for the truth. He was no joking man. Okay. Many times during his life, we see that he shows extraordinary level of courage and bravado, and we say temerity in one way to put it. So he had the temerity to stand up to the injustices, no matter who was it coming from. Sometimes it would be a governor of a certain place. Sometimes it would be Kemal Atatürk, the devil of the time, right? There's a famous back and forth between him and Kemal Atatürk that he said, Pasha, the parliamentarians, they're not even praying, and you're expecting me to not give a religious sermon. He's gonna be invited later to the parliament to be given a intellectual sermon, but he rather gives a religious sermon, right? And that bothers Kemal Atatürk immensely, that they have a back and forth, but he's not afraid of any of them, obviously. Okay. Um, so he gets the recognition as Badiou Zaman, right? And Badiou Zaman is translated into the wonder of the age from scholars in Van and other towns. His responses to scholarly challenges gain him renown beyond his region. Renown means fame. Began attracting both students. Wait a bit. There are pictures that I prepared. I don't know why they're not showing up. You see the pictures? Wait a bit, because I put into a lot of time in order to get the pictures and to create some of them, obviously, but it doesn't show up.
When you put it in the full screen, it does not show it. As you can see the pictures in the smaller.
But we saw
Uh,
it in the wait a bit.
yeah, in the beginning there was picture.
Yeah, so we have pictures here, but then it stops somehow. I don't know why. Okay, no problem. The most important thing is obviously getting the message across. So we are here, the recognition as Badi'u Zaman, and he basically debates and gets into a lot of discussions in his early life. But later, he is going to sort of back down from getting into too much argumentation and debate. But out of all the debates that he conducted, it is said that he beat and defeated all the oppositional thoughts. So he was a sharp debater who never who was never afraid of offending the other person, in a sense that facts don't care about your feelings, in a sense that some people say nowadays, right? So he didn't sort of take into consideration the feelings of other people. And from what I understand, his personality was he was not an agreeable person. He was a disagreeable person, all things considered, right? He had a strong personality, and that personality was needed in order to overcome all the challenges that are going to be faced in the later phases of his life. Okay, so Badi Zaman, he not only studies Islamic sciences. What we mean by Islamic science is basically the traditional 12 sciences that have been taught historically. In addition to these sciences like usul al-fiqh, fiqh, al-hadith, ulum al-Quran, and nahw and sarf, and the sciences of the language, mantiq, logic, and the other sciences. In addition to all of them, he studies the worldly sciences in one, not in the madrasa, because traditionally there used to be the madrasa and the maktab. The maktab were very pro-Western. They were obviously studying the Western materials, and the madrasas were only focused on the Islamic sciences. That, in a sense, you see that there should be a balance maintained. Otherwise, either the person becomes very enlightened in conscience, but very blind in the mind, or the person becomes truly brilliant in the mind, but terribly blind in the heart. So there must be a harmony struck between these areas of knowledge, and that is actually the mission he was onto, but not a materialistic science. He had a spiritually grounded scientific outlook into the world, right? So he saw the world not as some of the Sufis saw as non-existent. He didn't take the wahdat al-shuhud and wahdat al-wujud, the unity of perception and the unity of existence, into serious consideration. He actually read them, and it was too elitist to be made into a public doctrine, right? So he saw the material world as possible mirrors reflecting God's names. They didn't look down on nature as did many Christians and many other Muslims, but he actually looked at science and the scientific discoveries as potential seeds that can enrich the spiritual tree within a human being. But I'm just frustrated. These pages, the pictures are not coming. Okay, yeah, we did it. Now we did this one too. So you're not falling asleep. I'm gonna engage you to read the slides, and I'm gonna give potential thoughts if needed. Okay. So Mr. Muhammad, you become the volunteer and read for us the first few sentences and lines.
Okay, sir. This
Wait.
slide says encounter with the governor. Sorry. Uh, is this the slides? Should I continue reading?
Sure. Go ahead.
Encounter with Governor Tahir Pasha. Invited to a van by Governor. There is a black thing. I can't read
know.
that part.
Let me just remove it. Go ahead.
Tahir Pasha, who became his patron, lived in the governor's residence with access to a vast library, and he studied mathematics, astronomy, geography, and philosophy independently. He demonstrated that religious and modern sciences could coexist.
Sorry. Yeah, could coexist.
Yeah, coexist harmoniously.
Harmoniously. Yeah, sure. So in Van, he was invited by this governor, Tahir Pasha. And interestingly, he's got a very wide library, a rich library that contained the branches of worldly knowledge. And he studied astronomy, mathematics. You might have heard of him writing a treatise on mathematics. Have you ever thought about that? And also a treatise on logic, but they were all burned down, unfortunately. Maybe God knows. He didn't want them to be published, obviously, but he actually wrote on mathematics. And it is reported of him that he solved mathematical equations of the most complex nature with his mind, without even having a paper to write down and sort out the problems. So he had this amount of ingenuity that imagine of a mullah thinking through mathematical problems. That is really, that's what actually struck me when I was 12 years old. I was like, okay, this guy is a mullah, and I'm looking around all the mullahs here, right? I mean, what what does a mullah have to do with philosophy? What does a mullah have to do with astronomy? From my own experience, I saw a discrepancy. I saw something was off. Something pushed me that this should be the way to go. And then I looked more into the Islamic philosophical traditions, and Badiou Zaman is not the exception, obviously. There used to be many people who sort of try to reconcile religion and reason, and the products of religion and reason. Means the products of religion are the Islamic sciences, and the products of reason are the worldly natural sciences, right? So it was the human reason was construed and seen as a light that could get to truths that also God put it. Okay, so yeah, and there's the story of his piousness that that governor had five daughters, and he spent 2 years under this under this governor's house, and he never once looked in the faces of the girls. So that after 2 years, it is said of him that he couldn't make the distinction between their faces. Although he said there would be some friends of the governor who would come within a few days would know the faces. I mean, that wouldn't mean that it is wrong to know the faces of people if there's not the element of lust involved. But look at the amount of piety that he took as a caution, because he was on a divine mission. He was not a normal person. He was guided all through. Okay, vision for Islamic education. Oh, come on, please. Just give me a few seconds whether or not I can fix the pictures and stuff. Hmm. I think that cannot be done. Yeah. Can you see it? It's appearing somehow when I click it? Maybe if I click it, it could come. Okay, no problem. No, it doesn't work. Okay, no problem. All right. Anybody else wants to read? Mr. Shaka, are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, sir, and read that paragraph for us. A vision for Islamic education. Go for it.
A vision for Islamic education. Okay, skip that word. The separation of religious and scientific knowledge. Advocated founding a university, Madrasatul Zahra, combining both fields. Believed educational reform was the only path to amplify the Muslim Ummah.
Yeah, he had certain reservations and criticisms of the traditional madrasa curriculum. So he thought, okay, he boldly thought of a madrasa that was sort of, it takes a lot of courage to be thinking of establishing a huge university that's going to incorporate and reconcile Islamic and modern sciences, right? It is very hard. Maybe the people are not going to accept it, right? Because the people are there traditional, they have a lot of fears. But Beti Zaman couldn't take into consideration how he's going to be received by other people. So he thought of this. Zahra, you may see the parallel and reverberation that Zahra has with Azhar University. So it's like a branch or another instantiation of an Islamic university in within the heart of the Ottoman Empire, because the basis there was more in Turkey. Yeah, so he wants to establish that. Okay. Mr. Defer, Ms. Maria, if you guys were available, please let me know. If not, Mr. Muhammad, you go for it. I'll read it for us.
Okay, sir. Transition to public life, 1907 to 1911. Moved to Istanbul in 1907 to present educational reform ideas. He gained fame by claiming he could answer all scholarly questions posed. He advocates for Madrasat Zahra project, blending religious and modern sciences. He became a public intellectual during the Second Constitutional Era.
Okay, thank you. So you might have heard of the two phases of Badiou Zaman Said Nursi, the old Said and the new Said. We're now dealing with which one, as you think? Are we at this point dealing with the new Said or the old Said?
We are dealing with the old side.
Yes,
I
we're
think.
dealing with the old Said, and the new Said starts, obviously, it's a gradual process of spiritual discovery, but roughly it starts after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. right? And many events paved the way for his eventual admission of a newly transformed Said Nursi. Now, so in 907, we are maybe by that time he is in his 30s, and he's gaining fame and renown by his bold claim that in Istanbul he posed that here all questions are answered and no question is asked. And that is a semblance of his childhood dream that in one of his dreams, interestingly, he saw Prophet Muhammad. The dream is talking about the resurrection, and he's trying to find Prophet Muhammad. And he asks the Prophet, I want knowledge. What should I do? I think the parallel is this: you're going to be given knowledge on the condition that you're not going to ask anybody in the ummah. And a lot of interpretations are given as to what does it mean you're not going to ask anybody in the ummah. Does it mean like you're not going to be under the influence of any modern thinkers at that time, so that his thoughts become original? Because when you look at his thoughts, although he finished 90 Islamic books and committed all of these books to memory, because he had a photographic memory that once he looked at a page, he did not want a repetition. He did not need to look at it twice in order to actually cover. He not only did he have a photographic memory, because there are certain other people that would have it, but he also had analytical skills, because he combined it both.
Sir,
Okay.
I just want to add something.
Sure.
That dream that he dreamt of in his childhood of Prophet Muhammad it was just like an order. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, "Don't ask questions."
Yeah.
Um,
Anybody in the ummah.
this, yeah. And it reflected on his lifetime. Even if in his debates, I don't know if you can call it debate. It was not a debate. He was just answering questions, not asking questions.
Maybe in Istanbul, but he had debates with the scholars because they would test him.
No. I think it was not debate. It was just answering questions.
Yeah.
Because he didn't ask, as I can remember. I don't know if I'm mistaken or not.
Possibly, yeah. Supposedly he did never ask questions. And how does that work? I mean,
Yeah.
imagine you talk to a person. Sometimes you may ask in
How
order
do you-
to.
Yeah, you win a debate without asking.
Sure. That is another level of, intellectual achievement that
Yeah.
we don't see anybody doing that. So it is obviously coming from the blessings and the divine mission he was on.
That is right. And also, he didn't ask for any money or any kind of help from anyone. I
Yes.
think it's somehow related to that.
Yeah, sure. So once he returns from Russia, so he's going to be taken as a captive there. He returns there and he becomes a member of Dar al-Hikmah al-Islamiyah. There he gets money, but he's going to spend the whole money for the publication of his books, right? He lived a frugal life. Frugal in English means an economical life. So it's very economical, right? He would have 1 kilogram of honey, and that would last him for months, right? And he would have a chicken that would, put eggs twice a day, and that would be enough for him so long as the chicken is alive. So he had an economical and frugal lifestyle. Okay. Now, Damascus sermon, the famous Damascus sermon. Go for it, Mr. Shaka.
Okay, sir. Damascus Sermon, 1911.
Yeah, I sort of refreshed it. The reason I'm doing it, yesterday it took me 2 hours to just put the pictures there because I had to make the pictures there. You see? 1 hour and 30 minutes. So are we in Damascus?
Might fix it.
Yeah, you see it? I got it solved.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
where are we? Damascus sermon, yeah. Okay. So this is Istanbul in the early 20th century. It's very important to bear in mind how the places looked like, right? Okay, go for it.
delivered famous sermon at the Umayyad Mosque to 10,000 listeners, identified causes of Muslim decline, despair, disunity, ignorance, emphasized hope, truthfulness, and faith as remedies. Later published a خطبة
Khutbah.
الشامية, became one of his most important speeches.
Yeah, basically he goes there. There are 100 scholars and 10,000 lay listeners. And in his famous Damascus sermon, in which one day we're going to be reading it together. It's not that long. It is accessible and readable. So he's obviously he actually talks about love. Interestingly, that he says one of the remedies and solutions for the what is it, the predicaments and the ailments of the Islamic community is the lack of love. Okay, so he says Muslims are seemingly love to hate, right? They love to hate one another. So he's emphasizing hope, truthfulness, and the element of love to be existed in a society. And that reminds me of one of the books of Eric Fromm, a famous psychiatrist, that he has a book, The Art of Loving, and it is a deep book. It's not a romance type of love, right? He talks about if we remove the element of love, society doesn't exist. Imagine right now, if people's hearts, there's no level of love within them, everybody would be at each other's throat, especially the males, right? So it's very important to recognize the existence of love. And I have the best book on love written by Kierkegaard. I've never come across any book that comes as close. Okay, so I can send the PDF later. I'm reading it for the third time right now. And he had similar conclusions with Said Nursi. He says faith is the essence. And Said Nursi obviously is going to find a solution that is grounded in faith. It's not grounded in politics. In his early Old Said form, he was very active politically, more active than you think. But then in the new Said, now is going to be faith-based. Okay. Now we have an interaction between Badiüzzaman Said Nursi and Sultan Mehmed II, Rashad. Okay. How many minutes, by the way, are left for this session to be over? I'm not able to see it. Can somebody see it, or shall I open the bar?
No, we can see it.
We have 4 minutes for this one, no problem. All right. Finalizing vision for Madrasat al-Zahra. Actually, one of my dreams is to build a traditional similar to Madrasa Zahra, but in a smaller form in Suleimania. Maybe in the future, I've had this for a few years, that the Islamic, when I say the Islamic, doesn't mean just the normal traditional ones, but obviously the sciences that are overlooked, Islamic philosophy, Islamic kalam, these should be focused in order to deal with the problems facing the Ummah as a whole. Okay, Mr. Muhammad, go for it.
Finalizing vision for Madrasat Zahra. Traveled with Sultan Mehmed Rashad on Balkan tour, and he received approval to build university near Lake Van. And construction began but was halted by World War I. Demonstrated commitment to institutionalizing his educational philosophy.
Yes, before he met Sultan Mehmed, he was actually sent to a psychiatrist. Some of the people that were hesitant and sensitive to Badiüzzaman Said Nursi, they thought he was a crazy person. And then with the psychiatrist said, if he is crazy, everybody's crazy. It was always because of his brilliance and his bold courage that people would thought of him as a crazy person. Okay. Yes, we're at World War I, right? So everything is until there, he's very focused on his mission to build a university. But then everything takes on a new turn, a different turn. Okay. Supposedly, this is an imagination of what the university could have looked like. Okay, now we're transitioning to wartime service. Mr. Shaka, go for it.
Okay, sir.
Go for it. Yes.
Transitioning to wartime service, joined Ottoman army, organized militia to defend eastern Anatolia. Captured by Russian forces and imprisoned in Siberia. Wrote Quranic commentary, Isharatul Ijaz, in trenches during wartime, escaped in 1918, returned to Istanbul as respected war hero.
Okay, so we're less than 1 minute, I guess, by now, and we're gonna conclude for this session and come back in 5 minutes. Mr. Shakar, if you could send a link in 5 minutes, that would be appreciated. Okay?
Okay, inshallah.
Sure.